The United States, a young nation with a history of nearly 250 years, has rapidly risen to become the world's leading superpower. To achieve this, it needed outstanding individuals, talented figures with far-sighted vision, to steer the country through countless challenges. Among them, the position of president stands out as one of utmost importance. Not only does it represent power, but the person chosen for this role also embodies the hopes and aspirations of the American people. The success or failure of presidential terms is determined by challenges and crises, by the weight of the past, and by the vision for the future. 45 exceptional individuals, through 46 terms, have left a profound impact on America's remarkable development. In this video, let's explore 4 outstanding presidents who have shaped the history of the United States. The first president was none other than George Washington, the president of precedents. On April 30th, 1789, the Revolutionary hero, General George Washington, took the oath of office and became the first president of the United States. While most nations lived under monarchies, the framers of the U.S. Constitution chose a democracy with the creation of the presidential office. This was the first time in history that such a position had been established. The delegates leaned toward the idea that Congress would have more power than the president, as they did not want authority to be concentrated in a single individual. In this context, George Washington emerged as the ideal candidate because everyone knew he did not seek power for its own sake. After securing victory in the Revolution, Washington had resigned as commander-in-chief and disbanded his army. It was, in fact, his willingness to relinquish power that became the greatest reason for him to be chosen as the first president of the United States. During this unprecedented presidency, nearly every decision Washington made held special significance in setting a precedent for future presidents. He established the cabinet to lay a strong foundation for the new government structure, an initiative that all U.S. presidents have followed to this day. Notably, instead of simply appointing friends and loyal allies, Washington prioritized assembling a cabinet of the most outstanding individuals of the time. Thomas Jefferson was appointed Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton became Secretary of the Treasury, General Henry Knox took the position of Secretary of War, and Edmund Jennings Randolph was named Attorney General. Additionally, Washington shaped the relationship between the presidency and Congress. He maintained a clear separation between the executive and legislative branches, thereby enhancing transparency and preventing abuses of power or the rise of authoritarianism. He also exercised the presidential veto for the first time in April 1792, concerning the redistribution of seats in the House of Representatives. Throughout his 2 terms, President Washington only used the veto power once more on a military-related bill. In July 1794, farmers in western Pennsylvania refused to pay taxes and rose up in what became known as the Whiskey Rebellion. This was seen as a significant threat to the existence of the federal government. However, resorting to military force against his own citizens risked leading to tyranny, and an excessive response could trigger unrest across the nation. Aware of these dangers, Washington personally assembled more than 12,000 troops and led them to Pennsylvania. But instead of using violence, he subdued the rebellion through his authority and diplomatic skill. The uprising was quelled without a single shot being fired. Washington skillfully struck a balance between demonstrating presidential and federal power while avoiding the image of a dictator. Beyond his critical domestic policies, Washington also displayed deep foresight in shaping foreign policy. In 1793, he firmly kept the United States out of the ongoing conflict between Britain and France to safeguard the young nation's independence. This decision faced significant pressure and criticism at the time, yet it became one of the longest-standing precedents in U.S. history, staying out of European conflicts. Through this, Washington also established the precedent of the president's crucial role in shaping foreign policy. Of all the precedents Washington set, the most important was not how he exercised power, but how he relinquished it. In 1796, Washington decided to retire after 2 terms as president, declining a 3rd term. This may seem normal in the United States today, but at the time, his decision to step down after 2 terms, in many ways, shaped the survival of American democracy. For 144 years, U.S. presidents upheld this tradition, with only one exceptional case serving more than 2 terms, which we will discuss later. George Washington left behind a profound legacy in American history. To this day, he is still remembered as the father of the nation for his immense contributions to the United States. His face appears on the US dollar bill and the quarter coin. Dozens of schools, towns, and landmarks, including the nation's capital, are named in honor of the first President of the United States. Known as the principal author of the United States Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson was, in fact, the third president in American history, succeeding George Washington and John Adams. After a tense election in 1800, he was elected president and became the first to take office in the new capital, Washington, D.C. During his time in office, Thomas Jefferson focused on strengthening the young nation's economy. He significantly reduced the national debt by cutting military budgets and government spending. However, his greatest legacy was the Louisiana Purchase from France in 1803 for $15 million at the time, equivalent to over $400 million today. This acquisition added 820,000 square miles of land west of the Mississippi River, effectively doubling the size of the United States. There would be no United States as we know it today without this extraordinary land purchase by Thomas Jefferson. Essentially, what he bought was the central portion of the United States, a vast treasure trove of oil, timber, farmland, and many other resources. This propelled the United States from a minor player in the global economy to a rising power that astonished Europe. However, Jefferson's purchase came at a cost far beyond money. With the addition of Louisiana, agriculture expanded, leading to an increased demand for enslaved labor. This fueled the stark division between the North and the South, between freedom and slavery, ultimately setting the stage for the bloody Civil War. During his second term, President Jefferson attempted to maintain American neutrality in the Napoleonic Wars in Europe. However, as Britain and France, then at war, began harassing American merchant ships, Jefferson enacted the Embargo Act of 1807, closing U.S. ports to foreign trade. This severely harmed the American economy and sparked intense public opposition. The flawed law was repealed before Jefferson left office in 1809. Despite this, Jefferson remains one of the most influential presidents in shaping the United States as we know it today. That is why his face is carved into the legendary Mount Rushmore. One of the other presidents carved into Mount Rushmore is Abraham Lincoln. His name first gained recognition in 1858 when he participated in the famous debates with Stephen Douglas over the issue of slavery. These debates helped Lincoln capture public attention and laid the foundation for his later political career. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th President of the United States and the first president from the Republican Party. Soon after, Southern states began seceding from the Union, officially marking the start of the bloody and devastating Civil War. During this difficult time, Abraham Lincoln steered the Northern Union in the right direction with crucial decisions, most notably signing the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. This historic document changed the meaning of the American Civil War and transformed the Union forces into an army of liberation. A few years later, Lincoln played a major role in the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which made slavery illegal across the United States. Another memorable achievement during Lincoln's wartime leadership was the Gettysburg Address. On November 19, 1863, he delivered a brief yet powerful speech of just 272 words at the dedication ceremony for the new National Cemetery in Gettysburg. Widely published, the Gettysburg Address eloquently articulated the war's purpose and emphasized the noble goal of a United States founded on equality and freedom. The speech became one of the most famous addresses in American history. The Civil War finally ended in 1865. Abraham Lincoln was eager to implement reforms to help reconstruct both the South and the entire nation. One of these efforts was the passage of the Pacific Railway Act, which laid the foundation for the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. This project connected the East and West for the first time, helping to usher in a new era of development for a united America. However, Abraham Lincoln did not live to see its final completion. On April 14, 1865, he was assassinated at Ford's Theater in Washington by John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln's death sent shockwaves across the nation and left the American people in deep mourning. To honor the great president, on April 21, 1865, a special funeral train carrying Lincoln's body began a journey through 180 cities and 7 states to return him to his hometown in Illinois. This journey became one of the largest memorial events in U.S. history, reflecting the people's profound love and respect for a president who dedicated his life to the unity and freedom of the nation. Even today, many theories persist about what the United States might have been like had Abraham Lincoln not been assassinated and continued his presidency. Would the process of reunification and reconstruction have been more peaceful? Would racial discrimination have been eradicated sooner? However, history never repeats itself, and these questions will forever remain mysteries with no definitive answers. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the longest-serving president in U.S. history, holding office for 4 consecutive terms. He led the nation through the Great Depression and later faced the challenges of World War II. Despite his physical disabilities, Roosevelt inspired America with his courage and fearless spirit, helping the country rise through hardship. Born into a wealthy family, Roosevelt's education and career development were relatively smooth. Following in the footsteps of his 5th cousin, President Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt entered politics as a member of the Democratic Party. At this point, an unexpected tragedy struck. In 1921, at the age of 39, Franklin Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio, a devastating disease that left him paralyzed from the waist down. Many thought his political career was over, but Roosevelt's unbreakable willpower would not allow that to happen. With the support of his wife, Eleanor, Franklin Roosevelt gradually recovered and returned to public life. Nearly 10 years after his illness, he made a political comeback. In November 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt became the 32nd President of the United States. In his inaugural address, he delivered his famous quote, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Roosevelt took office at the height of the greatest financial crisis the United States had ever faced. Unemployment stood at 25%. Banks were shutting down across the country, and over 2 million people were left homeless. During his first 100 days in office, the new president proposed a series of legislative reforms to Congress. He also regularly addressed the American people through a radio program known as the Fireside Chats. Over 60 million people listened to these broadcasts, helping Roosevelt regain the public's trust. The most notable aspect of Roosevelt's economic recovery efforts was the New Deal, a policy that provided financial relief for workers and farmers, created jobs for the unemployed, and introduced a series of major financial reforms. As a result, the economy gradually improved, and Roosevelt gained overwhelming support from voters, securing an easy re-election victory. During his second term, as the U.S. economy continued to recover, support for the New Deal began to wane. However, Roosevelt made an unprecedented decision to seek a third term for a special reason. World War II had broken out in September 1939. Initially, President Roosevelt followed the U.S. tradition of staying neutral in foreign conflicts. In this critical period, Americans were reluctant to change presidents, as they sought stability amid global uncertainty. Thus, in 1940, Franklin D. Roosevelt shattered all previous precedents by becoming the first U.S. president to win a third term. On December 7, 1941, more than 350 Japanese warplanes launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Around 3,000 people were killed, and the United States immediately declared war on Japan and the Axis powers. Roosevelt led the U.S. to take a leading role in the Allied forces, securing significant advantages on the battlefield. As the war neared its end, Roosevelt was re-elected for a 4th presidential term in November 1944. However, he never lived to see the final victory he had helped shape. On April 12, 1945, Roosevelt passed away from a brain hemorrhage, less than a month before the war in Europe ended. Nevertheless, what Roosevelt left behind was nothing short of extraordinary. He is consistently regarded as one of the greatest U.S. presidents who shaped the nation's history. Edward Smith once wrote about Roosevelt. He lifted himself from his wheelchair to lift the nation from the depths of despair. So, we have just explored the legacies of 4 presidents who made significant contributions and shaped American history. Which president impressed you the most? Leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.